This week on Rockstar Superhero. When I listened to Blue Ox recently, I was immediately struck by the precision of their sound. Sure, they're heavy and they have that hardcore sound that most seek out, but there was something hidden in the mix. There is a bass tone that is absolutely out of this world. Luke Olson is the owner of that bass tone and a member of this wonderfully heavy Minneapolis-based hardcore metal band. In May of this year, Blue Ox released their first album in 10 years, the stunning HOLY VORE, which speaks volumes to the band's direction and intent. Talking to Luke, I was excited to hear that the band isn't giving up anytime soon and might even make it out onto the festival circuit next year. So we have something really wonderful to look forward to. If you're like me, this is incredible news. All said, time's a-wasting, so let's get into the thick of it. This is Blue Ox on the Rockstar Superhero Podcast.
I'm going to embarrass myself today. But I do. I mean, I really, when this hit me, as I said a second ago, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I think Blue Ox is a perfect rock band. And I get it. I'm prone to hyperbole. All my listeners are rolling their eyes right now. But look, I'm a lifetime drummer. I've been playing since I was 4. I pay a lot of attention. I've listened to a lot of different styles. I grew up on prog of all things, right? I mean, I'm 55 years old, so so my world is Rush and Kansas and Styx and ELO and right. It was all that 70s prog. Yeah, music with lots of notes, right? And so people assume that that's the only thing I'm listening to. But I'll say it again. I love playing grooves and I love listening to grooves and I love the bounce. And to be honest, the heavier, the better. So I'm just nuts for what Blue Ox is doing. And one more time, I'm so grateful you're here. So thank you.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you.
Yeah. I've been to Minneapolis once. Back in the summer of 1998, and of course it was hot and there was bugs everywhere. I have no idea what it's like to be up there in the winter, though. I've seen images on the news. You hear about winter storms. And I imagine everything is like Fargo. The movie.
You're close. Yep. Not far off at all. Yeah.
Ice fishing and stereotypical wintertime activities like neighborhood hockey. It seems to me that your band, Blue Ox, takes a cue from the wintertime. There's a sound of harshness to it. And maybe that is what inspires these killer songs. Do you find that your band works equally hard season to season, or do you ebb and flow like the seasons in Minneapolis and Minnesota?
I think most Midwest bands, us included, you really focus your time spring, summer, a little bit of fall on playing live. And then I think most bands go into hibernation and write all winter. It could be miserable getting out the shows, lugging gear to shows, especially, late December through February. It's sometimes just hard to get people out the door. And so, year over year, I think it's just our time. We look forward to that time just to kind of reset and then write riffs and start prepping what's going to happen in the spring, summer. So, it's the two extremes of the weather really kind of dictate, I think, bands in general around here.
Yeah. Well, back in the early 90s, of course, grunge took off here in the Northwest. And grunge had a sound that it had not because of the fashion that was associated with it, but because the majority of those bands came from this area where there was this dark cloud over the city 80% of the year. We're sort of known here for miserable weather and therefore miserable people, right? We're we're the kings of heroin and Xanax.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Is it like that? Is there sort of a miserable sort of scene to the Minneapolis area? I mean, Prince, of course, is famous for coming from that area as well. But, it seems to me that most of the stuff coming out of Minnesota is heavy and punkish and threatening.
Mm-hmm. God, it's hard to say. I think it's unique around here in that all types of genres sort of blend together, and everybody is truly, I guess that term of Minnesota nice. Bands are dark and write dark music, but the people in general, as people, are very sweet. Just everybody's a homie. It's hard to say. I think maybe, in our youth, we were a little more pissed off or what have you. But yeah, just everybody, I think it's just really unique. You'll get punk bands playing with black metal bands, and, we play with a hip hop guy this summer too at a brewery. And it's hard to say. I wouldn't say I'm personally in the dark anymore. I think, maybe I grew out of that phase, and as a band, I think we have too. But I think it's cathartic. We write, I think, really heavy music, dark music. Lyrically, Dennis is in some pretty deep subject matter. But as people, I think that's maybe why we're not pissed off, is we get that energy. We focus that energy into this band a lot, and
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, and it's true what you say about the people. I interviewed Brent from Wanderer a while back,
great
and
band. Yep, great band.
Same kind of thing. Very heavy, intense music, but extraordinarily kind guys. And I mean, I think that's the way it is for the most part. I mean, most people don't seem to understand that, but musicians get it, that what you're doing on stage is an act of catharsis many times. And you know what I mean? Sure, you're playing something you enjoy, something you like, something you wrote, something that you're precious about. But that doesn't mean that the thoughts, or the evocative nature of the material is actually somebody you are, right? Like, you're not this violent, angry person. You're just burning it off, so to speak.
Yeah, we have toured and played with bands that kind of carry that persona into themselves, and they're really kind of miserable to be around, assholes. It's just not pleasant. They're just, maybe it's some sort of attitude they carry, but we've played with those kind of bands that, like, okay, you're using music and that's how you are too, and it's not great.
Those bands don't go very
names, but no, they
don't go very far, man. They don't.
They don't. They really don't. And they're just not pleasant to be around. In a scene, like a underground scene, just word gets out, like, oh, those guys are assholes or this or that, and then you maybe play with them and you're like, hey man, you guys wouldn't need a beer or anything, and you just get attitude. It's like, whoa, fuck this shit. So
yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, man, Blue Ox does something relatively rare to me. You figured out a way to combine the hardcore punk ethos with some thrash metal groove. It's chunky and it's thick. And well, it's groovy. That's a pretty wild combination to me. And I know that I believe, I've read this, that you are not the original bass player. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. So I always hate to go on that, but I think it's important to get a take on this, because, when I was writing my questions out, or when I was thinking about the band, I was actually thinking about Queen and how Smile, before Freddie Mercury, Freddie was a fan of the band, and I'm curious, were you a fan of the band before you became a member, similar to like Neil Peart and Rush?
Very much. I had met these guys. They had been playing in, some of the guys in Devlin's Side, if you remember that band at all. And they had been on tour. And my old band, Ambassador Gun, had been on tour. This is like in 2005, and we crossed paths and come back to Minnesota. We just started hanging out, drinking beer. They had this cool band, Blue Ox. And so it was just, became a fan and became friends. Yeah. And they had been, around, so I joined in 2014, so they'd been around probably 7 years before I synced up, 7, 8 years. But I'd always been friends and always admired them. And the bass player, he got married, had some kids, and Blocks wanted to continue on, and I was humbled. They asked me to join, and I think that really started to drive sort of a new direction just because of the way I played bass. It's very I play it like a guitar, and I love punk triplet picking, like No Effects and Napalm Death and shit like that. And so that started to wield a new dynamic between the rhythm section, Dan and I. So I think they had that really stonery, bluesy thing locked down, and then it started to ebb because of the way Dan and I were kind of synced up. So it started to meld this kind of bluesy and then this hardcore punk thing started to kind of bloom in that regard. So it wasn't so much me writing, but just my playing.
Yeah.
Kind of started to change the dynamic a little bit.
Yeah. Well, you altered the thumbprint, right?
I hope so. Yeah. I've been, people have noticed, I suppose. I've tried not to toot my own horn, but people have like, wow, since you joined, it's a lot different. And so I took that as a good thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, again, my limited experience goes back 6 months, right? But I listened to the catalog, and even though I'm not necessarily noticing some of the things that changed, I still hear the core of the band, if you will, right? There's sort of a generalized sound that always happens with any band, kind of the way a song almost feels. But it is true that you coming into the group, once 2014 happened, there was this new energy. It's so funny to say new because, it's been 7 years now, but there was this new feel and vibe to it. I don't want to get off track too much, but I did want to ask you about the triplet thing. Being a drummer, I'm very aware of tones and the feel, but I've actually never heard it put that way. And I maybe I'm an idiot, but I've never. Can you explain to our audience what that means when you talk about the like triple picking?
Yeah, I think I'm just making up a term. I think I don't know why that came to mind. I've always just kind of described it, but I'm thinking of like the D beat, like the discharge beat, where I'm like with the kick, and so I just like, oh, that's a triplet, right? I'm kind of like going dillet.
Right,
so that's probably a whacked out term or whatever, but kind of in that vein of like Dan. I mean, he's such a he's a metronome. He beats the shit out of his kit, and his D beat. I would challenge his performance of that rhythm up against any band, and it's so fun to chase on the bass.
Okay,
and he kills it, and so that's kind of where him and I really synced up, and things started to kind of meld around that back rhythm section versus it was just the bass used to just very much follow the guitars, and then Dan and I we do that when proper, when it's called for, when you do that D beat backbeat shit, I'm just like along with them, and so triplet picking, that's my loose term.
Okay, well, no, but now I get it. I mean, once you sort of spoke it right, I understand that almost like the Herta, but it's so important. Most people, so listeners, check this out. When a bass player and a drummer are synced, you guys don't notice it, but trust me, you feel it. Everything changes, and most bands, sadly, unprofessionally, don't have those things lined up. Now, sometimes it makes sense why the song, actually requires a bass drum beat to be on the downbeat, and maybe the anticipation of the bass is on the upbeat, and that's purposeful for a song. But everything from plain and simple, doom bat, doom doom bat. If the bass is playing on that doom 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 doom, it's crucial that it's locked in and synced up, and especially if there's a crazy feel or anything going on, because if you don't, the whole vibe of the song gets lost. It sounds all of a sudden like 12 solos are happening versus one intense feel, right?
I would agree, and I've had the pleasure of when learning these songs, where can I step in and where can I step out? So there's moments on this record and some of the new stuff we're writing where I'll pull back and the guitar's kind of leading for a second, and you can know it's a noticeable gap of low end, and it's another thing where Dan and I are sort of syncing up and like, where if I pull back here and where does the groove? You just got the guitar just for like a wow, boom, back, and back into it. So it's that's where my writing comes in, dynamics like that. And so just really playing with the drummer.
Yeah,
and it really adds. To your point, it's not necessarily it's not up front. You're not noticing it, before the guitars or the vocals necessarily, but it's a feel, it's a rhythm, you feel it.
Yeah.
It guides it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I don't recall at the moment. It'll pop in my head, but the first track I heard of yours, when the bass came in, there was a guitar intro and then the bass and drums come in, and it just slammed. It had an immediate presence, and it was so synced up and so locked in. And I was sitting at a coffee shop. I was doing this again yesterday. It was preparation for today, and I'm just sitting there, and I never do this. I never bang my head in public, unless I'm at a concert. But I was just like, oh my god, this is so good. This is so good. And I look over at the coffee shop girl, and she's just giggling. I've got my headphones on, and I pull them off. I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, what are you listening to? And I'm like, this great band, trust me. So I got to say this. I've read that Blue Ox, the members of the band, all have either come from other bands or are parts of other bands, and maybe that's from the past, so that sort of they used to be. But I'm curious, is Blue Ox the only bride now, or do you still have other musical mistresses?
It for the core members, this is our main baby for sure. Drummer Dan plays in this really killer hardcore punk band, Sunset. And then I actually played bass in a sort of post-punk synthy band. Or actually, I'm playing guitar on that. Geez, I should remember that. So, but those are we spread our wings a little bit. It's just, I think Dan and I just kind of do a couple other projects, but the rest of the crew it's Blue Ox all the way. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So does it feel, because I mean, I've done that in the past myself, and again, not trying to weave myself into your story, but I found that I started to make enemies pretty quick in the band, and I had to make a decision. I had to choose. I don't want to get too much into band politics, but you know how it is. You're married to these other artists, and there's always expectations, especially as Blue Ox, starts to gain ground. How do you feel about playing music with others? Does it have the same feel to you in the sense of a passion? Do you do it strictly as a way to sort of spread your musical wings and try other ideas, or are you sort of keeping yourself open for whatever takes off?
Maybe a bit of both. It's a real loose. It's tight friendships. There's no hey, what you're focusing too much energy here or anything like that.
Gotcha.
For me in that other band, that is just more like a studio project, getting together with some people. Whatever comes will, but I think we know Blue Ox is our main focus, and if opportunity knocks for another project, I think that's up for discussion, but it's never come rear to any bad blood or anything like, hey man, you're doing this too much or anything. But we know where the focus is, and that's where we plan around. Actually, is Blue Ox. So tour shows, anything like that, studio stuff. But the other stuff's important too. I think it's I like playing different music. I've played metal bands for 20 years, and it's kind of nice just to try something new. But we're all committed to Blue Ox first and foremost, and pretty loose with it.
That's good. I guess I was curious, but I'm also, now that I'm a fan, I kind of want to, fans, they want to own a piece of the band. They want to kind of know that this commitment they've made is going to stick around at least for a little while, right? And so now that I'm in love, all of a sudden I have puppy love for this new thing. I don't want it to splinter off, right? And look, I mean, I totally understand as a musician myself. I understand that you have to test drive a lot of different things. You got to kiss a lot of frogs to find your princes. But in the same token, it's nice to know and refreshing to hear that Blue Ox is the primary focus, because it's really special.
I agreed. Yep. And the fact that we have, we've been doing this for a while, and just having that footing, we have the hours put in, we have the work put in, so it just, me at this point is like, oh, I'm going to go and try to amp this band up and get this going. It's just that would take a lot. I've got a wife, got a mortgage kind of thing, got a job, got to have that. But Blue Ox says we have our footing, we're known, and it's just, great to just keep that focus and energy going, and be excited about writing. And it's just, we get things like this, offers for interviews and shows, people want to play with us. So it's awesome. So, this is where our focus is.
Well, I'm excited. You're excited, man.
Absolutely.
Look, the band's latest album, and I'm probably going to say it wrong, but is it just Holy Vore or is it Holy Vore?
Holy Vore.
Okay.
Holy Vore. Yeah.
Okay. So before I get to the music, what does Holy Vore mean?
I wasn't sure for a while until we this is the title, and it's actually, I think, Vore, the way Dennis, singer guy, described it is something about eating oneself, something cannibalistic, something. Okay. But not in that death metal way of physically I'm eating my guts, kind of Cannibal Corpsey, but just like the Vore of Holy Vore, like
a carnivore.
Dissolution of self. Yeah. Just like eating oneself or soul or something, like the holy feast of dissolution of self is sort of kind of his explanation. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, simple and hardcore.
Yeah. Yeah. Dennis is a lyricist. He's dark. It's such a sweet guy. You wouldn't think that would come from upstairs, but he's a really dark lyricist, and I think that's the title says it all. I think. Yeah.
I'm always curious. I mean, obviously, I'm not talking to Dennis, so I can't get that sort of backstory. But I'm curious when there are lyrics like that. And now again, I want to emphasize this. It's not that I don't care about the lyrics. I actually, just as a drummer myself, as a rhythm player, I'm always listening to what's happening musically. Right, the lyrics, sadly to me, are very much last place. I'm really not paying attention unless I'm curious about it, and then I finally look it up. But I'm always curious, and this isn't a question really, but I'm always curious how somebody springs out lyrics like that. Where they come from, what experience, or what are they trying to convey when they are anything but dark people? You know what I mean?
Dennis just being he's super intelligent, and he's had some pretty dark spots in his life for sure. And I think just the way lyrically he conveys that, it's hyperbole. It's not direct. It's very I don't know what the term would be. It's just
symbolism,
his style, very symbolic. And it's interesting too, because in most songs he doesn't really repeat anything. There's not like a verse, chorus, verse. He's kind of, even if the part comes back to it, he's still singing. He's off singing something different. So it's just a story front to back, and that's the kind of lyricist he's always been.
Yeah, but it works exceptionally well because the music does the same thing. I mean, obviously there's in any well-written song there are patterns or sort of repeating motifs, but what's happening with your material is it's always progressing forward. I mean, I'm always hesitant to use the word progressive when it comes to your kind of music, because then it's misappropriated into meaning a different genre, style of music, style of playing. but yeah, you basically are a progressive band in that you're taking an idea and furthering it constantly. You're adding more energy, or one more layer, and you're taking the listener on a ride versus the roller coaster. You're going a direction, and it's going off into infinity.
I love that. As you know, Mikey, Logan, and Dan being the primary songwriters, there's never like a limitation. Like, this is how this song is going to be, or this, I want this song to sound like this. It's just where it starts and where it ends is way different, and it's great. Yeah. It's pretty great. It's just like, well, I think I've heard that before. Like, I think that's someone else's riff, or it's just like, it's just too vibing on something we already know. And those guys are really just great at like, okay, what are we going to do about it, and what should we change? Or yeah. And like Logan being a big King Crimson Baroness guy, he's just
wow,
like,
really?
Like, how much more stuff? Let's do something different here. Let's make it weird. Yeah, for sure.
Wow, are you serious? He's a King Crimson guy?
Oh God, if that's not his favorite band, I couldn't say who is. Yeah, he's a big guitar prog guy for sure. He drove to Milwaukee for one night to see him. I don't know, like in September or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I think if he's spinning rap, he's vibing on stuff like that, anything. But then then he brings these crazy low riffs to the aux practice, and it's like, okay, well, I suppose that headspace just kind of makes it what it is, makes our riffs what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I saw Crimson a few years ago and lost my mind. Just 3 hours of pure audio bliss. But I mean, I would love to be in that band, but I can't imagine trying to write songs in that band. There's just so much going on. There's so many musicians and so much personality and so much everything. I can't imagine being responsible for that. So, well,
something to see, not something to own. Yeah,
exactly. It's like the fanciest car in the world that you're a mechanic on. I'm like, no thanks. Well, let me go back to you.
Yeah.
So, dude, Luke, your bass tone, dude. So, this is another moment I'm going to fawn. That bass tone is legend. It is monstrous. And I get it. That's not necessarily you in the sense of like, it's how the record is mixed, how it's mastered, etc. But good God, I don't want to get too technical, but again, being a drummer, your playing is the first thing I'm looking to. And I'm looking to hear that connection that happens with me as a drummer, right? I'm listening for the tightness and the tones, and you have this massive drive and guts to your tone that is just so precise and thick, but yet it sounds super old school. Like just big old school tube amp. I don't know, how was that sound achieved?
Well, much appreciated. I was always a guitar player, and in my other band, we had done this. It was never a gimmick, but we would switch between guitar and bass live. We would, okay, you wrote this song on guitar, I'll play bass, and vice versa. Well, I kind of got burned on that. And I just fell in love with bass, and so then I really started to fall in love with bass tone, and got a Ampeg 810, got an Ampeg SVT, and then I've got a B2R. And just really fell in love with the graphic EQ. And then from there, Logan, he was playing bass in another band, and he had this, what the hell is it? OB3 Boss bass distortion. And I was using a guitar bass distortion. It still kind of kicked ass. And then he showed me that, and it was all over from there. And I really, I'll definitely attribute it to the head. And that pedal, that OB3 is just the pair. They're just meant to be together, especially in, I think, this music. And using, I couldn't say for sure, but I use a Fender P bass. It's just the length, I think, a little bit of more length, and the fact I can barely wiggle a 110 top gauge in there.
Really?
That holds a little tension. So it's low tune shit, and it's only a 4-string. I'm just not interested in a 5-string, but I think that extra length, that fat string, that tension, I can pull tone out of that top string. I think before was sort of lacking with Blue Ox. It just kind of, he started hitting that top string, and it was just kind of, well, it wouldn't matter where he was on the fretboard, but I really focused on like, this got to be tight. It's got to be tight and distorted and cut through the mix. You know, how many mixes have you heard where I hear the bass sort of, but you know, I just can hear those moments, and I just working with our studio guy that we've always gone to, Adam Tucker, Signature Tone Recording, wonderful guy and studio, and he's a bassophile, if that's a word. Just that he loves it. He's a jazz musician, stand-up bass player, also a rock musician. So his passion is bass, and he's taught me a lot of things in the studio as well. So I think it's just been a multitude of things really crafting that tone, and I appreciate the compliment. Really hard to dial that in.
Yeah, I mean, it really is phenomenal. It is interesting too. You're talking about just general tones. You know, I was thinking that, you know what, I think really what it comes down to, Luke, is that most bass, or I should say most metal, the bass is very clicky, almost like how look, I'm a big Gojira guy, right? But when you listen to like the mix of the drums, the bass drum has a lot of high end, has a click to it, so you can hear it. So you can hear it beat through all that bottom end gunk, right? All that stuff that's going on. You got to hear that click thing. And bass instruments by default in metal seem to be the same. To have that big, fat, groovy, old school 70s supertone is so uncommon that it caught me off guard. So thanks for sharing, and hopefully our listeners are still here.
No,
because I know it's so techy, you know.
Yeah. No, that's great. It is a studio thing. You know, you got to have separation between that kick and the bass. There is a sweet spot, I think, with the bass. You got to hear that string noise, but also that that low end. So yeah, for sure.
Well, with Holy Vore, what kind of response are you guys getting from the album? I mean, it's been out 6 months now. Am I correct?
Yep. You know, we'd been sitting on it. We recorded that actually mid 2019.
Okay.
The apocalypse happened, you know, as we were ramping up to like get shit going. So we sat on that for about a year and a half, and finally about this time last year, got the vinyl back and the records back and the cassettes, and really started getting in sync with Dave, and Dave doing what Dave does at Ear Split. Got it out. Response has been pretty great, and I think some of the write-ups is like not definitive of what we sound like or who we sound like, but they do latch onto that sort of like crossover stuff that we do, and it's really awesome to hear that, because that's, I think, what we've really strived to do, is not just be one thing. We're not just hardcore. And so we get like these, you know, references to stoner and hardcore punk and thrash metal and shit like that. And so in write-ups, that seems to kind of be a consistent kind of way to describe the record. That's pretty cool, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you guys absolutely deserve to be, you know, on the next tier, whatever that is. But I was talking to Kyle from Exhorder the other day. And we were talking about the cost of touring and the commitments bands have to make just to get out and typically break even, right? It's like, you got to rob from Peter to pay Paul, just so you can have Paul listen to your music. And, you know, so talking about touring these days seems relatively moot. I mean, especially currently with COVID, you know, the apocalypse you just mentioned. But that said, was Blue Ox ever a national touring act, or have you guys always been more of a regional band, and now you're sort of on a breakout, right? Because anytime, again, a band is sort of regionally isolated, or like living here, it's hard to get out and do a tour because of the financial issues. And I'm
Right.
curious what your guys' process with that, and if we'll ever see you out on the road.
Yeah, regional would be spot on as far as the history of the band, traveling, maybe as far as Detroit, maybe down to Kansas, things like that, Denver,
Right.
but not
Right.
any to the coast, because to what you were saying, we are isolated. It's the Midwest, especially Minneapolis, is just a beacon of awesome bands, music, but
Mhm.
you have to drive your ass off
Yeah.
left or right, west, east or west to
Yeah.
really get in that city circuit of playing. And so, we'd been weekend warriors, would go out, take long weekends. And so just stuck around the Midwest. And I think at this point, is hopefully this COVID shit starts to clear up. We definitely want to do more weekend warrior stuff, but I think at capacity we could probably go out 2 weeks, and we, at a time, everybody with work, life, jobs, all that. So extensive touring, probably not on the horizon, but getting to the coast, be that we fly and share gear or whatever.
Sure.
That's what we're starting to assemble. How are we going to do that?
Gotcha.
Do we want to do it? How long do we go? And everybody seems on board with, let's do it. Let's go out for, a week and a half stretch, and then come back and regroup and see, what did we make any money? Should we do it again?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we're gonna,
Yeah. I
we're
mean,
gonna test
that's
the
the thing. It's not a rich man's game. I mean, if anything, a band has to be somewhat well off just to be able to afford to go do the thing. So,
Right.
I mean, are you guys completely self-managed, or I mean, obviously you have your promotion company, but do you have a label? I mean, you know what I mean? Are you being helped by anyone, or is it just all up to you guys?
Up to us. I think if we were to ever lean on anything, it would be great to sync up with a label, maybe even just to split the cost of records or what have you. I think each member, most of us had been in touring bands and some national touring bands, that we had the experience under our wings a little bit, and can manage that, especially, the friendships we've forged, over, last 15 years on all coasts. And just the know-how of some of that, managing your time, things like that. I'm very much the band dad and anal retentive about time and things like that. So I suppose I've never worked with a booking manager. I know Logan, he was in Dead to Fall, and they did some pretty big tours, and they've done stuff with booking managers and probably had, pretty good luck with that. Totally open to that, but what does it cost? That's where's that balance? But I think as a band, we're financially stable and have enough know-how to be successful on the road. I think it's mainly, if you're a DIY band, you just got to play with the right bands in the right cities. I've done tours and we played with like random local bands that are a cover band at some venue 20 miles out of the city. That's not going to work. That's not going to cut it. And I think we transcended that,
It
would be cool.
That's a tough one, because you got to get your chops, you got to stay fresh, but at what cost, right? Because you're never going to break out if you don't have that. And granted, you may not want to. A lot of bands, we have this sort of dream about playing, but then, you discover, okay, it's nothing like the movies.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's nothing like that. It's not 1975 anymore. There aren't groupies everywhere. I mean, all the things that people sort of sell their souls to become a band, that stuff doesn't exist. But I think Blue Ox, I mean, not giving you advice, but I would love to see you guys on the festival circuit. And and I think how you get there is what you're doing right now. You're doing lots of interviews, you're getting a lot of promotion behind you. And inevitably people go, let's get a band on the bill. We'll put them at noon. We'll put them on second stage, but at least we'll put them in front of 2,000 people. And getting that opportunity is I think that the next part of your evolution, if the right people come calling. So I'm hoping that happens for you guys, because you're badass, man.
I appreciate that. We did that this summer. Actually, we were invited to play at the Cobra Lounge Outdoor Festival in Chicago. There was a 2-night event with Dead to Fall reunited, and there was
Nice.
a bunch of some Philly bands that were really great. Oh shit, I wish I remembered the lineup. Some Chicago bands, obviously, but we did a 4 o'clock spot, and it was interesting. It was like fucking hardcore, like hardcore bands, and we've got
Yeah.
that element,
Yeah.
4 o'clock in the afternoon, 95 degrees. There was a crowd. There was a hell of a crowd. It was awesome. It's just
Yeah.
the reception. It was
Yeah.
sort of hit and miss. Some people got it, some people didn't. But it was cool. It was cool. We
Yeah.
we were invited, and it was successful. We sold shit. People are into it. More things like that just seem more lucrative, and probably just the right thing for us to do.
Yeah.
Just DIY, hardcore, get in the van, touring. It just seems a little far fetched, but to your point,
Yeah.
like flying out to the coast, doing some festivals, shit like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be more
I mean,
lucrative.
if you can, at least if you can cover your nut doing these festivals, where there's $1,000, or whatever, just a fee to get there and to bring that noise, I think would be exceptional. I mean, Neil Fallon from Clutch said it best, every band's got to earn their fan base, one fan at a time. And it might take you 20 years, but if you really love what you're doing, 20 years is nothing,
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Last question for you, man.
Yeah.
When you were growing up, were you dreaming about being in a band? And if so, what was your dream band? What was your motivation? How did you envision yourself, being in the music business, if anything?
Oh God, absolutely. 14, my cousin had Nirvana Bleach on cassette. So this was like 3 years before Nevermind. And so he was 17. I was probably like 11. He showed me that cassette, Hammerhead, the Melvins. He just knew this shit from Minnesota and out your direction. And that was it. That was a calling. I begged my ass off for a Fender Squire and a shitty amp. And I just said, I want to be in a band. I want to be in a rock band. And I never stopped or really considered anything else until about, my late 20s. We'd been doing it. I'd been doing it, not in a big successful way, but the passion, it really didn't matter if I was playing to 2 people or 50 people or whatever. That was just what I was doing. And it hit me at a really young age. And that spirit really hasn't left me, other than just, where can you allocate your time realistically? But I will be a lifer, playing music, playing metal, playing hardcore. But once I got that stringed instrument in my hand, it was all bets off.
4 strings of death.
It was just, that was it. It was a calling. And I could say, I started with that. I learned how to play some Metallica very shittily. We covered Sepultura songs. That was kind of our first. Some of my old bands, like, those were our big influences, and everything just evolved. But it was always metal. It was always rock. That was the shit I was gonna do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, man. I'm telling you, Luke.
Yes, Rob. Thank you so much.
Yeah. You guys are what make me move. You guys are what makes my dream tick. You know what I mean? I created this whole Rockstar Superhero thing as a way to make myself feel better, right? Because I wanted to get out and continue to do something. But nowadays, I really love the idea of promoting others. That is just brings me the greatest joy. And I don't want to be too cheesy, but I'll end this way. Blue Ox is really, truly special. The music is exciting and actually surprisingly inspiring, and it's groovy, and it brings me right into the center. And so, you guys are literally a perfect example of a Rockstar Superhero band. And I hope to God, somehow I can see you live one of these days. That you stick to your guns, man, and don't quit, because again, you guys make something special. And I thank you so much for being here, Luke. You're
greatly appreciated. And what you do is pretty rare. I don't see a lot of these out there, and I'm glad we had the opportunity and finally synced up. And I would love nothing more if we get out your way to sync up and bullshit and jam out and whatever else. Yeah.
And
but I
kill
greatly
it.
appreciate the time. This is so cool. We haven't done anything like this in depth. You know, we've done some Word document interviews, and this is cool. This is really special. Unfortunately, the other dudes are at work and whatever, and I'm a work from home guy, so I'm glad this worked out. This is great. Super fun.